want to talk about the effects of climate change on the things that we're doing now, and how we need to work out what we can control and what we can't control. I'm going to talk about stuff that we can control, and stuff that we can't control. Okay, change. Okay, you've heard us talk before about things that happen inside an area, endogenic stuff, and things that happen outside an area, exogenic stuff. We need a framework in order to look at the way those things change, and then the way they change, what problems does that give us to the implementation of the MSFD. We know where the problems come from, what we call hazards, and when those hazards affect something that we value, like ecosystem services, we call them risks. And if you look at the list there, about half of those are natural things that we have to respond to the consequences of those happening, and others are things that we do, which are the causes. And you've seen this diagram several times. We like the diagram, so we'll keep using it. But there you see the things that are happening inside an area that you can manage inside the regional sea. But what we have to consider is what happens from outside that area, where we have to respond to the consequences. And just to remind you, and I think Chris showed this earlier, but his was a lot smaller writing, these are the activities, things we do, the stuff we do, pressures, the mechanisms of change from that, within an area that we cover. So what we then need to know is superimposed on that are the stuff from outside. And this is where, of course, climate change comes in, things that we probably can't control, or we can't control in a regional sense, but we can control them globally. If Paris goes ahead, then we can do that. And you see those things there. So if we start looking at how all this links together, now no talk should be complete without one horrendogram, and I could put 10 horrendograms here, but I'm not going to. These are the main features of climate change, all the things that we can think about. And each one of those, and you see it all starts from increased carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, but it cascades down. And each bit of that cascade comes to another horrendogram. Some of you have seen this before because you've read the paper. It comes down to individual changes relating to the natural system. And you see there where those changes, we can superimpose on those the descriptors that each one of those affects. If you then put all that together and say, let's go back to these hazards and risks and say, okay, which of those are affected by climate change? Some of them are directly climate change, the climatological hazards, F there, the chronic and long-term ones, of course that's there. But some of the others are also influenced by climate change. If we put all of those main topics together and cross-refer them to the descriptors, you'll see there, and the sum at the bottom there, how many of those main climate change effects are affecting each descriptor there. So now we know where the problems are coming from. Now what did the MSFD say about this? Well, you've heard me say before, in the proposed MSFD, it said more about climate change and what we should do. When it came to the actual directive, it had watered it down a bit. And no, it's essential to recognise that good environmental status may have to be adapted over time. So that's what we were thinking about. And we then started saying of each step in the implementation of the directive, where this climate change comes in. And of course it comes in all on where the pressures are, what measures we take, our monitoring proposals and so on. And say we can go through those. So then we say, okay, if you don't meet GES, is there a reason for that beyond what you can control? And it's what is called force majeure, stuff outside our control. We published this a while ago. So what we recently started doing, following this paper, was looking to see whether force majeure comes in a lot of other bits of legislation. In the paper there is climate change, unforeseen, irresistible, an external factor. And what we showed is that there is a paradox the more you learn about climate change and the more you accept it, the less you can claim it's something outside your influence when you're managing an area. So how do we cope with that in defining baselines and reference conditions? Do we have one baseline, 2012? Do we have a 2012 line with an increased baseline? Or do we say what the directive says, and that is adjust the baseline? And you then say, okay, well the baseline, we've seen this week lots of nice smoothed curves, but what about if you have real data? Where would you put a baseline on those data there? So it's trying to cope with that variability and whether we have to keep adjusting what we're doing. So just to finish this, we've got this good conceptual base, science base, but we've got shifting baselines. We've got less and less money for monitoring, so we need more cost-effective monitoring. We regard this as a wicked problem, something that social scientists talk about is out of our control. But the lessons in this are applicable not only to MSFD, but actually to many other things as well. So, I say, what we started then doing was saying, okay, how does society change? Okay. So, this idea of changing systems, are they really a problem for the ecosystem? Probably not. The ecosystem has been changing throughout geological history. And it's got used to new situations. It's got used to it's produced new equilibria. They're not necessarily a problem for the ecology, but they might be a problem for society. So the challenge we've got is for management to deal with these exogenic unmanaged pressures, like climate change, where we can't manage the causes, not when we're managing an area, but we can respond to the consequences. But we have to really realise what is manageable and what is not. So this is looking ahead to a time when those tattoos have faded and our science is being called into question because someone is failing GES and the member state said it wasn't us, it was this climate change stuff.